Grovor, who is alumnus of IIT Roorkee and IIT Delhi. He embodies 35 years of versatile experience in leading innovative organizations and coaching senior leadership across multiple geographies. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
This 2 days workshop was wonderful with you. It's Simply Biz Private Limited. And here we have few set of questions for you based on kind of questions like personality development and on your career. So
Sure.
let's start, sir.
Sure, Priti. Go ahead.
So our first question is, in the early year of your career, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced? How did you overcome them, and what lessons did you take away that have stayed with you throughout your journey?
So if I look back at the early part, I was actually pushed into leadership and senior leadership positions very, very early in my career, in my early 20s. If there is one lesson when I look back, it's asked for help. So I was in midst of stressful situations. I was not the kind of person who would actually share that I am not able to handle this. And so I didn't ask for help. And if I look back at that period, I think that's one thing I would advise anyone in their 20s. Don't hesitate to share authentically what's happening with you and ask for help.
Thank you. The second question is, how can organizations build a culture that promotes high performance while ensuring employee retention, both in the short term as well as long term?
Sure. So when I set up what is now called a GCC, at that time we called captives, with my move to Hyderabad in year 2000, I was very clear that it needs to be an organization where people are truly inspired to work. We don't have to ask them to stretch. In fact, I had to go and tell them, go home now, otherwise you will burn out.
Okay.
And so there are 2 or 3 key things. One, fairness. I was very clear that people come on board at the time of hiring itself, make sure that you are bringing the right talent on board, because the cost of a wrong hire is very high.
Right.
Second, make sure that there is a fairness in how everybody is compensated or how assignments are made, and it seemed to be fair. Fairness does not mean equality. In fact, distinction is important. Your best people will not stay with you if you actually have a peanut butter approach that you give same kind of a rewards to everyone. But they need to be done in a way that they're very fair. So I used to tell my people that, look, it's completely a meritorious organization. You perform well, both in your promotions and assignments and compensation, and even the variable pay, that would be there. And that was, I think, the crux, that credibility happened. So in an environment where the usual attrition in that was 30-40%, we had a 0% attrition for years, because people wanted to actually be in a high performance organization which treated them fairly and did something that was exciting.
True, sir. Fairness is very important. Our third question is based on systematic professional development. What strategies can organizations implement to ensure the systematic professional development of employees, especially in dynamic and multidisciplinary teams?
We are living in an environment that is changing extremely fast. We used to call it a VUCA world, volatile and uncertain and complex and ambiguous. Now actually new acronyms are coming in, which are, I wouldn't even go into the kind of acronyms, but essentially we have even gone much beyond that. So in this fast changing environment, if one has to strive, there are certain capacities, not just competencies and skills, that one needs to develop. I think these are capacities like listening, for instance. This is whether it's to your team members or to your clients. If you don't have the capacity to listen deeply, you can't be a good employee or a leader. So how I work at a systemic level is, the person as an individual needs to unfold, based on their propensity so that they can transcend their limits. The group needs to come together like we did in the last 2 days,
Right.
and we started with the values based thing to discover what are our shared values so that we have ownership and accountability. And the third thing we did towards the end today around action learning, which then over the next 4 to 6 months as it unfolds grounds this whole thing and creates a sustainable change. So the one-to-one shifts, the group energy shift, and the action learning. That's how the systemic development is required to be done in any organization. We call it whole system change.
Okay, sir. The fourth question is, what qualities should young professionals like us focus on developing early in their careers to prepare themselves for future leadership roles?
So, the Harvard Business Review talks of the trust triangle, and the vertices of the triangle are authenticity, competence, and empathy. So, competence is hygiene. If you are not competent, if you're not performing more than what is expected of you by your boss and your clients, then you don't belong there. Empathy is very key. So we spoke about listening, right? So if you listening is not about my understanding what other person is saying. Listening is the other person feeling understood. So that I can only do if I develop this capacity of empathy. And third most important is authenticity, where what I think, what I say, what I feel, what I do, they are all congruent, all the same. Only then, when these three things are there, can people trust me, whether people inside the organization or outside the organization. So these are the capacities any professional at any age should look at. Where is there a wobble? What in them is already a strength? What are some challenges? And seek help if they need to, and through self-awareness, develop these.
Okay, sir. Sir, our fifth question is, what are your suggestions for senior leaders on effectively leading teams, fostering collaboration, and driving success in a competitive environment?
So, trust and collaboration is coming up. The consistent theme across many GCCs I work with or I'm in a dialogue with. It's becoming even more complex post-COVID because working from home, remote working, multiple geographies, multiple continents is a fact of life. So, if we spoke about trust just now in the previous question, from the collaboration perspective, what I am seeing as a trend now is people who come to office on certain days only. It's important to leverage that time for collaborative coming together as teams, because certain things that you can do face to face, like you have experienced the last 1.5 days, what you might have experienced in the bonding and the discussions in both informal stuff as well as the formal, can't be replicated by the Zoom calls and other things. There are certain things that require that. In my own career, I used to, even though we had video calls and all, I used to go down to different geographies, US, Europe, uh, Japan, wherever, where my teams were there and clients were there, regularly to make sure that the face-to-face things are there. Only then the video calls and only then the other things can be effective. If you think I can only do everything remotely, that doesn't work. So I would encourage people to actually have regular coming together, even if it is not every day. There are productivity improvements when you work from home also. And I've been working from home for 16 years. At the same time, lovely to come together.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for being with us.